Pinkertons Ghosts is a horror anthology podcast by Superversive Radio, with no affiliation with any detective agency, person, real or imagined, or the dark forces of Outre Terre. It is not intended for children. I got the call every Pinkerton expects to hear, but that none want to. Jack Morrow is in hell. I don't know how Control gets her information. I'm not sure if she has a direct line to heaven, or if one of the Fae tell her such things, or if she's psychic. Oof, hope she's not psychic. Anyway, I regret that my first thought upon hearing the news was, not surprised really. The follow-up from Control, of course, was, he's not dead though, so drop whatever you're working on, meet up with Sean, and get his ass out of there. Try to rescue his mother too while you're at it, but she's not the priority. Seemed heartless, but Control is never known for her warm, sensitive side. I shudder to think what she'd be like as a mother. As I understand it, her job is passed down via nepotism and heredity, but... ugh. Anyway, this is irrelevant. Jack was in hell. He was alive. We had to get him out. There are innumerable ways into hell. Angels don't guard it because why would they? The security for heaven is much tighter. Nigh impenetrable. I sent Sean a text, asking him to meet me in L.A. I was going to do a complicated ritual that involved summoning a demon, and then hitching a ride with it as I banished it. This method carried with it a significant risk, but I was ready to make that sacrifice for Jack. Sean, of course, listens to the reports on the regular, and he reads the transcripts. Nerd. So he remembered that Jack had found some contact with the Egyptian gods of death over at the truck stop in the desert near Reno. I listened to the reports while I'm working on my experiments. I don't really pay attention unless I hear my name in any of them. The noise is soothing for my ADHD. Anyway, I told Sean to get to Reno post-haste and meet me there. I drove up, partly because I refused to fly southwest, but also because my gear usually makes TSA cranky. It is always a problem thinking about what magical or mortal gear I can bring around Sean. He insists on wearing his Ring of Dispel, which screws up my ability to tap into the Verumvicio. I, of course, would leave Siren's Bane at home in its lead case. Before I drove off, I asked Gordon O'Hedesy for his advice on what I should bring to descend into hell. To my surprise, the first thing he suggested was, if you're going to go to hell through the Egyptian means, it'd be stupid of you not to take me. Or Lizzie, for that matter. What benefit could you possibly offer me in hell, Gordon? I asked. First off, boyo, he said, you're smart. Real smart. But you don't have millennia of experience trying to outsmart devils and demons. The Egyptian ones are tough. I've been around significantly longer than you, let's say, so I can think at least on their terms. As for the rest of it, look, I prefer to keep my secrets a bit. Suffice to say, you can't afford to not have me around. I decided it was worth it, if only because it'd be funny to see Sean's reaction to me having a living disembodied head. He was wrong about Lizzie, though. I wasn't going to expose her to hell. She's too cute. Despite his protestations, I left her at home. I packed my usual gear, soul stone, the shotgun that fires holy water balloons, the holy water squirt gun, that was for Sean, and I also included a couple of other odds and ends I stuffed into my fanny pack. I've not made significant headway recently inventing anything too interesting. Been too busy with Jenny. I'm pretty disappointed in myself, actually. I always promised I'd never let a dame interfere with work. Ah well, with my luck she'll probably be dead sooner or later. I drove over to Reno to pick up Sean at the airport. We'd coordinated it so that his plane would land shortly after I would arrive. He jumped 3 feet when he saw Gordon O'Hedesy sitting in the passenger seat. Gordon looked at him and said, "Hey, pal, I got a shotgun." I looked at Sean and shrugged, said, "He called it. My hands are tied." Sean remained quiet in the back seat. I think he was on his cell phone texting someone. Probably Violet. Missed Jenny. Wondered if I'd ever see her again. Didn't matter. I pulled up at the truck stop. I had to use Gordon as a sort of GPS system. He couldn't even see the road, but he kept telling me directions, often with a profanity or insult thrown in for good measure. When we arrived, Sean erupted from the back seat. "Jim, how could you possibly trust this thing? It's a disembodied head that curses like a drunk sailor." "Well, you ain't half bad yourself, you..." I shrugged and said, "He keeps me entertained." Sean seethed in silence as we walked to the gas station where Jack had met the demon goddess Isis and her son, Horus. I remember Jack was offered a fortune for some gas, so I hoped I could do something similar. Sea Control, I do listen to the reports. Sort of. I was carrying my shotgun, while I had forced Sean to carry the holy water squirt gun. He had looked at me like I was insane. I'm used to that. As we walked into the interior of the gas station, the chime alerted our presence to a man pushing a mop and bucket. He wore an eye patch. Sean looked at me. I nodded. This was the place. "Howdy," the pirate-eyed man said. "We don't get too many travel..." I shot him squarely in the chest with my shotgun. It was already preloaded with water balloons containing holy water. His skin sizzled like bacon thrown into an open fire. His flesh melted, and he opened his mouth in anguish and torment, but no scream came out. I shot him a second time, through the mouth, and watched as his head dissolved into a bloodless pool. Demons' physical forms don't have blood, because there is life in blood, and demons are not properly alive. Therefore, if you destroy their physical manifestations, you essentially cast their forms back into the pit they crawled out of. Upon the second burst, a back door was thrown open, and a woman stood there. Her hair writhed like it was alive. She screamed with a voice bigger than sound itself, a feeling that echoed to our very soul. "What did you do to my son?" She made some peculiar gestures with her hands, and a giant cobra the size of a Buick materialized and surged through the door. The scales were the size of dinner plates, bronze in color, and its fangs were as long as swords, and from each dripped what must have been a venom potent enough to take down an angel. Sean held up the hand that was holding the ring of dispel, and slipped off a little lead sheath that I had made for it. The fact that the ring still touched his skin meant that he could see past the supernatural, but the lead lining would allow me to operate magic so long as the ring was covered. The disgusting snake disappeared in a cloud of sand. Isis, mother of magic, collapsed in an exhausted puddle of flop sweat as Sean stepped closer. The ebony gem in the center of the ring of dispel was pulsating with a dark black shadow. I began clearing the rest of the gas station as Sean started to interrogate the goddess. Just because Jack only saw the two of them, that didn't mean there weren't other creatures lurking. Or, rather, I cleared the part of the station that seemed immediately apparent to our mortal eyes. Based on what Jack saw last time he was here, the place is larger on the inside than on the outside, which means it was almost definitely a nexus to hell, or at least some sort of other dimensional space. There was no one else inside, but there was a doorway that looked like it led deeper inside. I wanted to wait for Sean on that one. I reloaded with extra shells from my fanny pack. I didn't have many, but I did have about 10 spare rounds left in the pack, plus another 6 in the shotgun itself. I came back to hear Isis just finishing telling Sean, "That's why we're here. Waiting. I can't go back. Please. I'll go anywhere. It's not yet the judgment. Don't send me back." Sean looked pensive. I walked up to him and asked what the problem was. "Okay, look, Jim," he began. "This is a weird situation. Apparently, Isis and Horus really pissed off the rest of their friends in the Egyptian pantheon. So, they've been hiding out on Earth, waiting for Judgment Day, occasionally making deals with some mortals on the side. You basically sent Horus back to hell, which she says is going to put him right back in the hands of the guys we know as Osiris and Ra. And she's afraid that if we kill her, she'll be right there with him. She offered to let us use the portal to hell in the storage closet if we let her go. Why would she wait by a portal to hell if she was hiding on Earth? And why would she hide in Reno? I didn't bother waiting for the answer. I just shot her in the face with yet another balloon filled with holy water. "We're going to go get Jack, Sean. We're not making deals on the way." As she dissolved on the floor, Sean disgustedly threw his hands into the air. Okay, and how are we going to find the way without her then? Sean's a smart guy, Control. Really, he is, I swear. I rolled my eyes and said, you have the Ring of Dispel that allows you to see through magical effects, and I see through the Verum Vicio. We'll be fine, Sean. Plus, we got Gordon here. Yeah, Boyle, don't forget about me, he said. Sean slipped the lead sheath back onto the ring and stepped around the bubbling, oozing puddle that used to be the physical manifestation of the demon goddess Isis. I'd lose no sleep over sending her back to hell. We walked up to the door I had found. There was some energy radiating off of it, like how you can feel electricity when you stand under those really big power lines. I had created a little front-facing satchel for Gordon to rest on my chest and see all that was going on. Forgot to mention that, Control. My bad. My thoughts are a little scattered this time, I'm sure you can tell. Anyway, Gordon looked at the door and said, Oh yeah, that's the way downstairs for sure. Sean, with a clear look of revulsion, asked Gordon, Why would they be hiding from the rest of hell here? I don't know, meatbag, Gordon retorted. I had made the mistake of letting him watch Futurama. He'd taken a liking to Bender. Why do you keep doing this stupidly dangerous job with that girlfriend of yours? Love makes creatures do weird things, and demons. I mean, they can't really feel love like you do, but they do have a sort of obsession that kind of substitutes for what they have. Oh, hey, kind of like that Gaelic goddess that has a thing for Jimbo here. Ixnay on the Odysque, Gordon, I whispered through clenched teeth. I listened to the reports, Jim, Sean said with a deadpan expression. I know all about your Morrigan, and Oberon. You gotta fix this when we get back. We're all worried about you. Maybe when we rescue Jack, we can work on rescuing you from, I don't know, yourself? Well, let's get Jack back, and then we can worry about my gradual descent into madness, I said, sliding the rack back on my shotgun like they do in the movies. But I already had a shell loaded, so that just ejected a fresh one. Thank God Sean wasn't looking at that moment. Although since he listens to these things, he now knows about it. I kicked open the door to hell. It bounced back because it's a door that opens both ways and hit me in the face. Gordon chuckled. Sean snorted to stop a laugh. I thought it was locked, okay, Control? Went back to the gas station, got a bunch of tissues from a now bloodied nose, and carefully opened the door this time. It was okay. There was just inky blackness, and a stone-cobbled pathway that extended about 20 feet to either side. Wide is the path to hell, after all. There was no sign posted about abandoning hope. I'm pretty sure that was just expected and implied at this point. In the distance was a faint orange glow. We walked towards it. We stepped through a sort of invisible membrane. There was a tugging sensation as we stepped over the threshold, and for the entire time we were in hell, we felt cold. Not the kind of cold you have on a winter's day. Now, this is the kind of cold you feel when you have a really bad flu, or COVID. While we were walking, Sean asked me, Jem, does this path slope a bit in the middle a bit? It's pretty dark. But rather than use the Verum Vicio to give me the ability to see in the dark, I chose to simply crack a couple of glow sticks. The path did indeed have a sort of parabolic arc, where the apex of the arc was in the center of the path, and it seemed to fall off towards the sides. I didn't want to go too far from the middle, but the slope definitely increased the further away I walked. Gordon warned me, Hey, boyo, you want to stop that? You don't want to fall off this path. Trust me. Gordon, what are we standing on? I asked uncomfortably. Jim, this is the Egyptian path to hell. Everything here is snakes. The gods are snakes. The punishments are snakes. Even the literal ground you're walking on? Giant snake. I blanched, a cold chill running up and down my spine. My knees got weak and I said, Snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes? Sean patted my back and completed the quote. Asps, very dangerous. You go first. All around us, the very faintest sound of hissing could be heard. I could see flashes in the distance, and heard innumerable screams every time. "Gordon?" I asked.
"Fire-breathing snakes," he said. "Keep walking. Don't look anywhere but straight ahead. You'll be fine."
We didn't really listen to Gordon. That was a mistake. We saw lots of things on that pathway. I chose to give Sean the glow sticks and adjust my eyes magically to see in the dark. It's a spiritual darkness and a physical darkness, so the Verum Vicio parted it like a flaming hot sword through butter. I saw everything like it was daylight. And as I was in the Verum Vicio, I saw the truth behind everything. The snake's back that we were on, a gargantuan monster, was bridging some great chasm. All around the chasm were prison cells stacked one on top of another, and in each cell, people were subjected to degrees of horror. Before Christ's return, the demons are in charge of this part of hell. Soon enough, they will be joining their victims. Every cell had no lock, no door. Any prisoner could walk out at any time should they so choose. No one ever did. Each person accepted their place in hell under the whip. When Sean, Jack, and I return, not if, I will be using the Vicio to edit what I have seen, or I'm never going to sleep again. It's enough to know that hell is horrific. No man needs the details. Only the sick and perverted crave to be titillated by such atrocities as await the damned. I chose to save what shreds of my sanity remained by simply using the light of the glow sticks to navigate by. I cautioned Sean against using his gift of Elisha to see further than was necessary. As we were walking, something flew towards us and swooped low over our heads. It had the body of a lion, with the head of a deformed man, like a face made of melted wax, and the wings of an eagle. It came to land with a resounding noise, not graceful, but powerful. The scales rippled away at its point of impact, and we heard a high-pitched hissing noise that echoed and reverberated in the darkness below. When it spoke, each word was spoken as though it were the cries of the damned, screamed, dripping with fear and pain. But none of those emotions reflected on its curiously sloped face. I won't try to replicate the sound's control. Suffice to say, we quailed before it. Props to Sean. He put on a bolder face than I did. I have no idea what it said. It uttered a list of words that flowed like water, but once again, the sound was a horrifying mishmash of screams, yells, and shouting. After it stopped speaking, Sean and I looked at each other with panicked expressions. We had no idea what it had said. Gordon, however, spoke up and answered it back, a short phrase in a language that sounded similar, but obviously I'm not a linguist. The Sphinx threw back its head and jumped off the side. It didn't try to fly or glide, it just fell. I have no idea what happened to it.
"What did you say?"
Sean asked, with a hint of unrestrained wonder in his voice.
"It's a Sphinx," Gordon said. "It speaks Egyptian. Easy enough language to learn. As for what it said, it's always the same riddle over and over. Sphinxes are really simple creatures. The answer is man. The answer is always man. It's sort of a motto here in hell. I mean, man was the reason for the rebellion after all."
Sean looked thoughtfully at that and stopped talking for a little while. It was honestly a relief. As we were walking, without any discernible reason, the area around us started transitioning. The darkness that had covered everything was lifted into twilight, pre-dawn. We could see for miles and miles, stretching out until, well, there was no end that I could see. But there were everywhere men and women toiling away, wearing gray linen shifts, working the farmland. "Gordon?" I asked. "I thought hell was just hellish. This is almost pleasant compared to what we went through."
"What, didn't you read Dante?"
he asked.
"Look, some folks, they're pretty terrible. They lead awful lives. They suffer greatly for eternity. They make up most of the 9 circles. But the outermost layer? That's just the realm of eternal boredom. Their souls are still damned, but the damnation is just infinite tedium and mindless labor. Can you believe it? The ancient Egyptians thought all of this was heaven? I mean, they got what they wanted, I guess."
We kept walking. I don't know how long we were in hell. I don't know if time matters here. We didn't feel hungry or thirsty. We didn't get tired. We just kept moving. Every once in a while, Gordon would stop to talk to us about such and such a politician or famous person who happened to find themselves in the Egyptian side of hell. It was fascinating to see how many Muslims chose this version of hell. I don't even want to imagine the Muslim version. That would be a horror show. It was incessant from Gordon, but Sean didn't say much the whole time. I don't think he likes Gordon very much. Finally, without rhyme or reason, we found ourselves about to step off of the snake's back and onto an actual stone floor. Basically, the snake seemed to dive very deep downward, and right where his back became too steep, there was a fully paved floor, with actual cold stones. We stepped onto the stone, and I kissed the ground. I've never been so terrified of the possibility that the snake would lift up its gargantuan head and just look at us. Before us, not 20 feet away, stood a pair of massive obsidian doors. No, they weren't obsidian. They were the same color and intensity of Sean's Ring of Dispel, or my Ring of Siren's Bane. How does one open the gates to a throne room in hell? In this case, you just keep walking forward, and the doors open themselves. Inside the throne room were 6 walls formed into a hexagon. Each wall had a different color: off-white, obsidian black, scarlet red, green as infection, jaundiced yellow, and one wall was a pure shining white, brighter than the sun. On each wall were inscribed 1,000 languages. I recognized a few scripts, but there were more than I have been exposed to. Finally, I saw English. Each man's eternity is chosen by his heart and deeds. None shall pass if the advocate will not speak in their stead. The room was largely empty, save for a colossal chair, a table with refreshments laid out on it, and another chair that looked like a witness stand from those British courtroom dramas, as well as an elaborate, ornate set of golden scales. We saw a large man, maybe 12 feet tall, his skin colored a pale green. He was bare-chested and wore what appeared to be a linen wrap around his waist. A mortal soul stood before him. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, but what I did see was the giant man reaching down and lifting the person to the witness stand, carrying him like a baby. The soul was placed within, and the giant asked it, "You have walked the snake's back, answered the riddle of the Sphinx, and have endured much to tell me of your righteousness. Tell me, what sins have you not committed?" The soul proudly stated, "In life I did not murder. I did not know any woman but my wife, and I was always loyal to Pharaoh." Apparently time still moved slowly, as this person was clearly from the ancient times of the Egyptians, not a modern man. And the admission of him having a wife led me to believe that it was a man. The giant gave a low rumbling noise and said, "You speak falsely. You have murdered with your hatred, and committed adultery with your lust. I care not for your Pharaoh, but let the weight of your heart see the measure of your guilt." With that, he leaned down and placed his finger, as wide around as a Christmas ham, on the person's chest. He screamed in anguish as the finger pushed in and pulled out. The man's heart stuck to the giant finger like glue. Man was still alive, panting, fearful, as the giant walked to the golden scales. On one side was a pure white feather. The heart was placed on the other scale, and immediately the scale sank. The giant turned back to the man and said, "The righteousness of the Almighty condemns your deeds, and you have no advocate to speak in your stead. You are not welcome beyond." The giant waved his hand, and the person disappeared in a wave of black, with one final wailing cry. He turned back to us and said, "None pass without the advocate. But you are not here to be judged." "Ah, yes. My cousin has trapped your brother within his own realm, hasn't he?" Sean piped up and asked, "Wait, are you Osiris?" The green giant smiled a bit, looked up, a bit of wry humor, and said, So they called me once. But no, I am one called Death. All men must meet me and stand judgment. But you two, you have the advocate to speak for you. You have aught to fear from me when you eventually cross over. You, however, exile, we should not be meeting. Why are you here? At this, Gordon spoke up, in Egyptian again. I couldn't understand him. You know you will still be condemned at the final judgment, yes? The advocate will not speak for you. Gordon spoke some other bitter-sounding phrases in Egyptian. Then, have you tried the Morrow food these days? It's literally to die for. The giant ignored Gordon and addressed Sean and me. I suppose you'll be wanting to find him now, then? I can open the door for you, but the way you'd just come, it will not be open to you for your return trip. Yeah, I said. That'll be fine. We didn't really expect much. Honestly, we expected to battle more demons and whatnot. Oh, there will be plenty of that later. The giant Death chuckled at this. Suffice to say, most of the denizens of hell are bracing themselves to be needed on the mortal plane soon enough. But for now... At this, he waved his hand, and a much smaller stone doorway opened up. Please, take your friend from my realm. He does not belong here. And if, for whatever reason, you find yourselves returning back here before your time, do not bring this traitor back with you. Nice to see you too, Morty, Gordon retorted. The giant Death went back to sit in the chair that was set up, and drew a long draught from a goblet of wine that had been set there. He waved his hand wearily in dismissal. Another mortal soul stood in his presence. Sean and I looked at each other and hurried toward the door. We didn't want to witness another damning. That's all the time I have today, Control. I think it's only fitting that Sean tell the rest of our tale. How we found Jack in Hades' realm and subsequently got him out. And his mother. Yeah, I'll let him tell you about that. Until next time, this is Jim Donovan. Over and out. Pinkerton's Ghosts is a podcast distributed by Superversive Radio, licensed under an attribution non-commercial, share-alike international license. This episode was written by Ken Dickerson and performed by the same. Ben Wheeler edits, directs, produces, and herds cats. Ken Dickerson performs our audio editing. Visit us on Facebook, read articles on superversivesf.com, or listen to us on unauthorized Acast, iTunes, or Spotify. Contact us through Twitter at @PinkertonsGhosts, email us at pinkertonsghosts@gmail.com, or send us noble messenger possums with messages strapped to their backs. Don't worry, they know how to find us. Thank you for listening, and good luck.